ill-deserved. Coming to the midst of students, I'm always passionate about sharing my experiences as a scholar, diplomat, and a public intellectual. I wish to thank Dr. Misra for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today about human rights on this Human Rights Day, and also Dr. Malik. She was the first one to contact me, madam, and invite me over. Bodybuilding has not been in my educational trajectory. I wish to come here. I did my graduation in Devonshire and then went to JNU in Delhi. Did my MPhil there, and then I joined the civil service, and then I never looked back until my retirement, when I enlisted myself for a PhD degree, which I got 2 years back in social justice. Having had an experience of diplomacy, of practicing diplomacy, and having done my research in social justice, and I did it in Odisha actually. I studied 5 districts of Odisha where there was a majority of marginalized communities, mostly scheduled castes and tribes. I've got a fair understanding of what rights mean and what violation of rights mean. Well, many of you have spoken on various dimensions of human rights. I don't think I need to repeat them, but I would like to touch upon other matters of human rights. I would start by saying that human rights are more known for their violations than for their preservation and respect. If you are referring to human rights, we say human rights is violated, and we try to redress that through various mechanisms. Of course, one is the judiciary, where you can approach the judiciary through Article 32, as you know, habeas corpus. But there are some other mechanisms also. You can form movements, organizations, civil liberty organizations, fight for rights. And there are various organizations, NGOs, civil bodies, fighting for rights of people. But in the present times, and I will dwell more on contemporary times, respect for human rights, rather than the historical part of it, which is fairly clear to you. Why are rights violated? A majoritarian state like India, with an absolute majority in the parliament, can abrogate human rights at their free will. And if the judiciary is suppliant to the executive, as has happened in the past, in the last 3-4 cases of chief justices, who merely ignore what the executive said, then human rights is in trouble. We are in danger. No wonder international human rights body like Freedom House or Human Rights Watch or Oxfam report speak about humongous inequalities in the Indian society. They even produce reports. You must have known about the Oxfam inequality report. Inequalities is a direct fallout of disrespect for human rights. Because right to equality, right to freedom are enshrined in our Constitution as fundamental rights, which have been in a way inspired by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 and the American Bill of Rights, the due process of law. But are we following the due process of law? I think it goes up to a limit, and then it somehow stagnates. It doesn't go forward. And there are certain hindrances on the way. There is a majority in the parliament, and I dare to say that it is a Hindu majority, and therefore there are any number of violations against minority groups, not only religious minorities but ethnic minorities also. These violations go sometimes detected, sometimes undetected, because the media sometimes also does not cover all the violations. For example, when Article 370 in J&K was violated and the special rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir were abrogated, there were several instances of human rights violations of Kashmiri citizens which went unreported. Why? Because the internet was shut down, and it was told openly that that is the longest shutdown of an internet in the world which India had while the Kashmir disturbances was going on. So you never went to know how many Kashmiris were shot by the police, by the army, how many were detained in custody, how many disappeared from their homes, and how many turned renegades in their own land to defend their own land. We never knew the figure. In a very conservative count today, there are more than 600 prisoners who are intellectuals like you all, students, journalists, who are in prison without trial. They have been clamoring for bail but not getting it. You remember the case of Father Stan Swami? How many remember? Raise your hands. Father Stan Swami. He was a Catholic father who was working in Jharkhand. 83-year-old man. He was in custody without trial. He was not given bail. He developed Alzheimer's. His hand shook. He couldn't even lift a glass of water. He asked for a straw. They didn't give him a straw also. And he died in custody. 83-year-old man stands for me. You have heard of Anand Teltube, the recent case of release of Anand Teltube, who suffered 2 years of jail without bail. Anand Teltube is a very, very mature intellectual who has written several books on caste. And I have a few books of Teltube with me. He is an authority on caste. And just because he supported the Dalit cause in the Bhima Koregaon incident, you remember the Bhima Koregaon incident? He was caught as an anti-national. I've come to define anti-national. What does anti-national mean? What does nationalism mean in these troubled times? If I say something that there is serious reputation of human rights in this classroom, do I violate human rights? Don't you have freedom of free expression and speech? I think I have. But I may be branded an anti-national because nationalism is now synonymous with the ruling party. That is why if I say anything against them, I am branded an anti-nationalist, and I may face jail term, and I may not get bail also. Something like the likes of Stan Swami and Anand Teltube. What's going on? We do have a judiciary, we have judicial review. We have all mechanics of enforcing judicial fundamental rights. But there has been silence. Institutions of the state, who are part of the state, who are defined as part of the state, they are silent. Not only are they silent, but they run after people who are so-called anti-nationalists. The ED, the NIA, you name them, and government institutions like Income Tax Department, they'll come after you. And they'll plan something, maybe like what has happened in the past also. In many instances, there were documents planted in computers of people and seized, and then the person was branded anti-national and subjected to harassment and prolonged jail term. I am not saying that it is only in India that is happening. Human rights violations, though the Universal Declaration of Human Rights very grandiosely put that it is justice, dignity of man, freedom to all, applied universally to all. But the opposite is now true, that human rights violations are universal. It is happening not only in autocracies, who never believe in the sanctity of human rights anyway, but also in democracies. There is a thin wedge between a democracy and an autocracy. When does a democracy turn an autocracy? How can you characterize the Indian polity now? Is it a full-fledged democracy, or is it veering towards an authoritarian system and therefore an autocracy? What is it? How do you define it? As political science students, you need to think about what's going on. Be critical. Be critical. You need to be critical. That amount of criticality is needed to focus on important subjects like human rights, because it concerns you. It concerns all of you. There was an eminent political scientist called Hannah Arendt. You must have heard about her. She was of Jewish origin. Her parents were Jewish. They were targets of the Holocaust, and she was a German. But she had to quit Germany and settle down in America. She has written a very fine book called The Origins of Totalitarianism. Some of you must have read. In which she says, the right to have rights. The right, my right to have rights. As a refugee, as a Holocaust survivor, she didn't have a right to have rights. And she is saying that do the refugees and the migrants in today's society have human rights? Though fundamental rights are also applicable to people who are non-citizens. It is written down. You can see that. But do they get the rights? These Rohingya refugees came from Burma, through Sri Lanka. Have they rights? No. They have no house. They are living in shanties. So what about rights? Rights to citizens are deprived, rights to non-citizens are denied. Then what is the sanctity of human rights at all? Why do we observe this Human Rights Day at all? But no, there is a reason. There is a moral reason, there is an ethical reason. And the moral reason is that human rights, as the American definition goes, is created by God. Is a man to a man. Human rights is a man to a man rights, and given by the Creator, that all men are born equal and deserve to be respected as equal human beings, and that it is the gift to humanity. It's a moral perspective. There's an ethical perspective that human rights have to be respected. Human rights are to be respected. Though the respect is most of the times absent, Somebody just mentioned about the atrocities with even US, the biggest upholder of human rights and democracy, has played havoc on society in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Libya, in Iraq, and go to the South American democracies which were uprooted by the machinations of the CIA. No human rights. And they teach human rights. And we have to take lessons from them. It's not that I am defending the Indian establishment or denying human rights to our people. We cannot always hide under the fig leaf of no, it is our internal problem. You should not interfere in our internal problem. When Ukraine happened, when Russian forces marched into Ukraine in February this year, many of the democracies supported Ukraine because Ukraine was a legitimate democracy, and as per the UN Charter, it had its own sovereignty and integrity, and it was violated. But we didn't. We abstained, we continue to abstain in the UN. Again and again and again. 4 times, 5 times we abstained. Why? Because we had a national interest. We had to play both Russia and US. We had to get some things from Russia, for example, cheap oil, arms, energy from Russia. We didn't want to discontinue that. And our foreign minister has been very glib, very brazen in saying that, well, it is in the interest of the people of India. So we don't care. Why doesn't Europe speak about their interests in Asia, in Afghanistan? It's not tit for tat game. International relations is not like that. International relations is how to preserve your own foreign policy with the principles which are attracted to it. It's an ethical thing. The ethicality in today's conduct of foreign policy is very much missing. And missing in India as much as in other countries. So we cannot hide and brush it under the carpet and say that because you guys are doing, why can't we do? Because it benefits our people, why can't we do? But we are not doing the good thing. You are supposed to be the largest democracy in the world. You are supposed to be the harbinger of democracy. You flout your democratic credentials all the time, though there has been a constant attrition in your democratic values. And yet, you do not defend your democracy, in my view. By playing up to Russia's invasion of a fellow member country of the United Nations, you flouted your own democratic credentials. I don't know whether that was right or wrong. Jaishankar was my batchmate in JNU. We studied together. He was not like that as a student. He was more of a left-oriented student because in JNU we were all taught Marx and Engels and Lenin and all those things. He was a leftist orientation. Now it's become totally 360 degrees. Alright. Now he defends the Prime Minister Modi as no one else in the cabinet. He is doing a job perhaps. I don't believe in him. I have serious differences with him. Though we are very close during our student days. He has gone in a different direction altogether. I think in the government, as it is, people have to go in a different line. Either you toe the line or you get out. people who have told the line they are there, irrespective of their intellectual qualities, of which I have serious doubts, but that apart. The question of human rights has agitated every Indian, and more so the Dalit communities, the marginalized communities, women, children, labor. Look at what happened during COVID-19. It was like a national emergency. The whole country went haywire. When thousands and thousands of workers kept walking on the roads for miles and miles together to reach their homes because they had no security, they had no shelter. The right to shelter is a part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, mind you. And our fundamental rights is borrowed from there. Both fundamental rights and directive principles. And when you say directive principles should be conjoined with fundamental rights in the governance of the country, you have to respect directive principles also as part of fundamental rights. In fact, since the coming of the PIL, public interest litigation, as somebody mentioned, the principles, the directive principles has acquired a very salient role in preservation of fundamental rights. Rights and principles now go together. And every conscientious judge understands the value of principles as much as the rights. Because rights, in my view, more than the principles, more than the rights, are the essence of the Constitution. There is a political scientist you all know, Granville Austin. That must be a part of your curriculum. Granville Austin mentions that both fundamental rights and directive principles are the essence of the Constitution. That both have to be read together. The rights and duties go together. Without one, the other has no meaning. That's why many of you would not know perhaps Mahatma Gandhi. He sent a protest letter to the committee drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He seriously disagreed with them. Why? He said you are denying duties and only taking up rights. Rights doesn't come to a person on its own. He quoted Satyagraha. He said, I do my duty, therefore I fight for my right. So he gave primacy to duties rather than rights. And he said a man can enjoy a right only when he has performed a duty. When he hasn't performed a duty, he has no right to ask for his right to be sacrosanct and given to him. He had serious differences. Of course, that was not the later Indian position. For the first 20 years, the fundamental rights held primacy, and there were many, many path-breaking cases, as you know, on fundamental rights. The Menaka case is very famous, which upheld preventive detention, which said preventive detention is not good. The due process of law was introduced. Champakan Durai Rajan, that was how caste was given status for reservation. It led to the first amendment of the Constitution and many other rights. Many other amendments directly followed from people's going to the highest judiciary to protest against violation of their rights. But today's India is a different India. Today's India is not the India in which we grew. Sometimes it seems difficult to understand that today's India is what has happened, what has gone wrong. What are the limits of majoritarianism? What exactly are the limits? What do they want? Do they want a theological democracy or they want the real democracy? What exactly do the rulers of India want? You cannot negate history. You cannot negate a substantial part of your population who are Indians also and build your castle in the air on the basis of a majority community. It cannot sustain itself. You remember that case of that lady in BJP who said some remarks on the Prophet?
Napur
Sharma. What happened after that? There was commotion in the Muslim states in the Gulf. And finally, that lady had to be suspended from the party. And then India had to seek pardon. Because these are the states with whom Mr. Modi has built relations. These are the states from where we import oil. These are the states where our labor, maximum labor, is based. We got about 70 billion remittances this year, last year, from the Gulf alone. Now, if you infuriate the Prophet, or if you go against Muslims of India, there will be a problem. And you have to sustain that. Can you do that? You are a multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilinguistic, and all these which makes up a pluralistic society. You pride in that. You pride in that. When I was traveling abroad as part of my diplomatic duties, they respected India. They respected India not because India was big, but because India was diverse. Because India had a tremendous diversity. This diversity no other country in the world has. As your country, you should pride in your diversities. You should revel in them. You should celebrate them. Not only tolerate them, but celebrate them. And if you kill them, if you tyrannize them, if you balkanize them, if you polarize the society, where would you go? Even the Hindu kingdom of Nepal declared itself a republic. It couldn't sustain itself as a Hindu republic. That is the only Hindu republic in the world. And what are you trying to do? Now there is a big commotion in the parliament on the Uniform Civil Code. You heard that. Why is this? Uniform Civil Code is a part of the directive principles, Article 46. 44. This government wants to install Uniform Civil Code. It has already been done in Gujarat, though Parliament has not yet passed the law. Uniform Civil Code will hit personal liberties of certain religious groups. They know it. It was like that, changing the talaq procedure, undoing it. And of course the Ram Janmabhoomi episode everybody of you knows, and you should know also, when the Muslims felt threatened. I am not a Muslim, I am a so-called belong to a superior caste. I don't believe in this caste nonsense. But then I am born into that.
But we believe in sir. We believe in Hinduism.
He believes in Hinduism.
Yeah, I am so-called Hindu. Though I believe in Hinduism, I am a believer. I am not exactly an agnostic. I do my pujas, but I feel religion is personal. is primary. Religion should be left to yourself. What is your religion is your lookout. The state should not interfere in my religion. Similarly for Muslims, what is their religion, there is their lookout. And of course, fundamental rights guarantees that. Article 25, right to practice and profess religion. Yeah? And if today, suppose, a Muslim guy marries a Hindu girl of their volition as adults, the state will interfere. Then you have to seek permission from the local collector. Why? Doesn't Article 25 give them the right to marry each other? They are free citizens of a free country. Every right to marry the religion who they like to. So there is an intrusion, there is an interference of the state in every action we do. It has become a Hobbesian state. You know Thomas Hobbes, the Leviathan. Today's Indian state is a Leviathan. It pokes its nose in every damn affair of the citizens. So where is John Locke? There is J.S. Mills. Those Enlightenment thinkers are gone. Those who had propagated rights, they're all in the past. Rousseau is in the past. We don't follow them. Edmund Burke inspired the Universal Declaration. The right to pursuit of justice, right to pursuit of happiness. He called it happiness equated with justice. Where are those people today? Where is Thomas Jefferson? Where is James Madison? They're all gone. Even with such a rich legacy of Enlightenment thinkers, America is today now the worst abuser of human rights in the world. Nobody can deny that. And I will tell you, I will give you a good economic reason for that. Why did it come? Perhaps you have not noted it. The introduction of neoliberalism. You know what is neoliberalism? Yes. Yeah? It is beyond liberalism. It came in the 1990s with the so-called economic reforms, but instead of reforming the economy, it aggravated the economy. Which even the architect of those economic reforms, Manmohan Singh, admitted later. That we did it because we had to clean up our system. But I think we didn't do the right thing. Of course, they took a lot of these rights-based legislations. Right to work under Manrega, right to education, right to food, National Food Security Act, right to shelter, Prime Minister's whatever is called EMGSA or whatever, the precaution. But he was not happy that this economic reforms, what they have happened, has boosted the so-called bourgeoisie, the comprador bourgeoisie, the so-called millionaires and billionaires of India at the cost of the poor people. It has driven a wedge between the rich and the poor, and a very, very large wedge. So that today, India is known more for its rich-poor divide than respect for fundamental rights. And this rich class have all the rights, whereas the poor class do not have any. That is the fate of India. That is a neoliberal India, the neoliberal policies which you are following now. And it is not only in India, it is all over the world. This neoliberalism has come after capitalism. where a group of people have amassed power. This group of people have taken what you call crony capitalism, become pally with the rulers to be, with the ruling elite. It's a give and take situation. The electoral bond situation, you see, electoral bonds, all opaque. There is no transparency in the electoral bond system. Those who pay through the electoral bonds, their names are not disclosed, the origin are not disclosed, but they fund political parties heavily. If today Mr. Adani is getting all the lucrative assets of India, it's because he has paid the highest. He is the highest bidder for the government. There is no surprise in it. If he has become today's fourth richest person in the world and the richest person of Asia, it's because through electoral bonds. He pays heavily to the government and asks for favors from the government. So government issues them, you have the right to use this port or this railway station or this airport, just take on. So finally, the rights thing is a chimera, is a myth. There are no rights for the poor, there are no rights for the marginalized. If you talk of rights for the rich, I will agree. The rich have the rights because they have paid for it. Poor don't have the rights. So are you going towards an equitable system, equitable society? I am asking you questions. I am in conversation with you. Are we heading towards an equitable society or an inequitable society? We are. We are in a so-called democracy, but an inequitable democracy, where the poor has no rights, fundamental or whatever. The directive principles hardly apply to them. Very, very valuable directive principles. The state should strive to bring about a state, a welfare state, which will respect justice, dignity, freedom, etc., etc., and should be read along with the fundamental rights, which is fundamental to the governance of the state. Ambedkar said, his famous speech, when the constitution was drafted, you know that, in November 1949, what did he say? He said, you will have political equality, but you won't have social and economic equality. And if you don't have social and economic equality, those who have political equality, then demolish the system. Or those who do not have social and economic equality, they blow up the structure of democracy. Ambedkar. And that is happening today. Only that the blowing up process is not happening. It may not happen under the rigors of the state, under the rigors of the institutions of the state, the police, the NIA, the ED, the income tax department. These are all instruments of the state. They are a part of the state. They are defined as the state. That will not happen. So, we go back to where I started, fundamental rights. What is the sacrosanctity of fundamental rights? It is held to be sacrosanct in the UN Declaration of Fundamental Rights, of Human Rights. From where we have drawn heavily. Our fundamental rights chapter has been drawn because it was around the same time. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, October 1948, coincided with the drafting of our fundamental rights chapter in the Constitution. When under the chairmanship of Ambedkar, there was a team working to draft this particular chapter 3 and chapter 4. And they were inspired by that. But their inspiration was shocking. There has been for the first 20 years a rule of idealists led by Nehru of the country. which believed in a socialistic way of economy, idealistic people. They were the students of Lasky. Nehru was a student of Harold Lasky, as you know, and his gang, who believed in a socialistic model, and they were close to the Soviet Union at the time, and they were averse to capitalism. In fact, the Bombay Group, you know about the Bombay Group, a group of industrialists at that time. Yeah, you know that. Yeah. They said that, leave it to us, we'll do it. We'll do it in a socialist pattern of society. That was one phase. Then comes Mrs. Indira Gandhi. She is also a socialist. But she changes the optics of socialism. She goes closer to the capitalists. She is in between somewhere. Then comes Rajiv Gandhi. Socialism no longer in his lexicon. He is out and out a progressive, modern, capitalistic thinking leader. Of course, then comes Narasimha Rao, who totally bulldozes the socialism part in the constitution and comes with reforms. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh duo, they come with reforms. And then, of course, others follow through the reforms. We are still in the reform age. But this reform, as I said, has gone in a different path. Since 2014, we have seen how there has been a combination of certain forces upholding the neoliberal policies and helping the rich at the cost of the poor. And if this be so, our fundamental rights are not secure. And when I say our fundamental rights, I mean a large part of our minorities who have to be protected as per law. Their fundamental rights. Because after all, India is one of the poorest countries in the world. India's poor population is among the highest in the world as per UN definition. So we have to give a balance. In conclusion, I will say, we will have to give a balance somewhere. We have to uphold our rights, we have to respect our rights, but we have to treat our citizens as equal. If we do not treat our citizens as equal, there is no meaning of fundamental rights, there is no meaning of human rights. If there is constant violation of the rights of low caste people, there is no fundamental rights in India, I would say. After all, SCs and STs taken together are about 25% of the population. If they are deprived of the fundamental rights, despite all the instruments which are supposed to protect them, the SCs and STs Act, the Forest Resources Act, now who cares for the Forest Resources Act? Forests are taken away with impunity to make way for industrialists to build their industries. Their livelihood is threatened, their livelihood is taken away. And worst of all, the tribals' religion is taken away. They are now called Hindus. The Dalits are also gone back to Hinduism. When most of the Dalits believe in Buddhism, Ambedkar had converted them into Buddhism, as you know, Dalits. Because they felt that Hinduism gives them nothing. Hinduism gives them no respect. But now Dalits are appropriated, tribals are appropriated, everybody is a part of the Hindu society now, leaving out one segment of the Indian society. So friends, this is the state of fundamental rights in India, as per my definition. And I will end here, like what Gandhian philosophy says, that if you do your duty properly, you enjoy your right. Do your duty properly and then claim your right. You cannot just claim your right without doing your duty.